Our final panel for this morning will be a discussion on the new approach to reaching higher education students. Our panel will consist of Brent Sanford, Interim Chancellor of the North Dakota University System, Kathryn Birkeland, the Ronald and Kaye Olson Dean with the NDSU School of Business, Tom Erickson, COO and VP for Intellectual Property with the EERC, and the moderator will be Kevin Black, CEO of Creedence Energy. Please join me in welcoming this panel.
Well, thank you, Darren. That's incredible that Krinkstead could go through 70 plus slides. We have a little timer here. He nailed it right at the zero market. So that's pretty impressive. Well, thank you, Ron. Thank you, Riva, for the invitation to be here. Ron told me many times he wanted to save the best for last. So we appreciate the opportunity. We're excited to talk about higher education. We talk about the future of this industry, but it won't happen without future talent. And we're really focused right now on ensuring that higher education is affordable, it's accessible, and most importantly, it's relevant. And so we're going to start with Brent here, who is our interim chancellor. And Brent, when we think about relevancy, I can't help not think about Charlie Kirk. And I thought our Attorney General yesterday did a great job, remembering Charlie. And he had an incredible message on family and faith and American exceptionalism, but he got to start talking about relevancy of college education. And he went all across this country, East Coast, West Coast. I don't think he was talking about North Dakota, but he challenged, what is the relevancy? What is the ROI? And I'm really proud of the direction that higher education is going in North Dakota right now. And a big part of that is the vision that you have and the message that you're sending. And so you're a guy that doesn't need any introduction in this room, but I do want to start with you. I'd be curious, Charlie was supposed to actually be in North Dakota next month on the campus of University of North Dakota. I'm curious what you think Charlie's message would have been to North Dakota, and more importantly, tell the crowd about your vision as Chancellor.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So I think Charlie's message would have been faith, family, and America, like it always was. And he liked to challenge the status quo of higher ed. He liked to debate. And that's what higher ed should be about, is free speech, safe free speech, but also that debate. And we want to continue that forward. But he brought up interesting points that were really resonating with Gen Z. What I saw in the semester of being the president of Bismarck State is these kids are asking the question of, is it worth it for me to invest in a four-year degree? Is it worth it for me to continue on from that four-year degree? I can just get a job. So we're at a function right now that was not the case when I was coming through high school in this town, Watford City, in the 1980s, where there were $20 an hour jobs available. There were not market rate good jobs available, so that drives more participation in higher ed. Today we end up with baby boomers retiring, with new industries that need new types of skills, and we have declining enrollment in higher ed nationwide, but we have 2% unemployment here in North Dakota, so these things don't jive. What do we have to do in higher ed? This is Kevin and my job, me as Chancellor, Interim Chancellor, and he as the President, to be relevant to these kids. And my first thing is, what is the workforce situation like in the state? What are the employers saying? What are the parents saying, the K-12 teachers saying, and the students saying about this? And are the perceptions matching? And oftentimes they don't. You heard a panel yesterday of the Bakken Area Skills Center with Junior from One Oak. I mean, this is actually integrating together. You've got K-12 with Superintendent Holland. You have Skills Center from the state investment in CTE. You have Bismarck State bringing in dual credit, CTE, and trades, trying to catch those kids while they're here. Because if I can summarize one thing you'll hear from me over the next years is that we still have an opportunity to do more in higher ed, because 45% of our kids don't go to college or military. 45%. So we've got a lot more to do. In higher ed, we tend to be more reactive. We assume there's a static amount of students that are coming in, and they're going to come in and they're going to look at these degrees that have been here for a long time. But we've got a number of college presidents here today. I see Mollander out here. I see Herning from Dickinson, and from Williston. We had Steve Shirley here from Minot State 2 days ago. These presidents get it. There is a new need for different types of careers and different types of professions. And what you all need, if you're looking towards more automation, more electronics, more electricians, that kind of thing. That's what we need to hear. So we'll be responsive to workforce needs and responsive to what these kids of the future need. So thanks for the chance, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. Kathryn, you are the Dean of the College of Business at NDSU. You were here 2 years ago, I believe, and a seed was planted based off of the conversations that you had with industry that we need to get these kids from Eastern North Dakota out to Western North Dakota and see you can't be inspired and imagine that what you don't know. And so you took it upon yourself to lead an effort called Bison to the Bakken, which was a smashing success this last year. Why don't you tell the crowd, first just introduce yourself a little bit, what you do at NDSU, and then tell us about Bison to the Bakken.
Sure. Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you to Ron and all of the staff for allowing me to be here. As Kevin said, my name is Kathryn Birkeland. I'm the Ronald and Kaye Olson Dean at the College of Business at NDSU. New to North Dakota, new to NDSU, just over 2 years ago. So brought my whole family up to Fargo, and we have received a very warm welcome. But as Kevin said, I attended the Williston Basin Petroleum Conference last summer as a person who knew nothing about oil and gas or any of the energy industry. And the continuing theme was we need workforce of all types. And I said, I have students. I have workforce. Can I just bring them to you? And so I, last summer, drove myself around, because I had never been west of Bismarck either, and visited lots of towns, received an extraordinarily warm welcome. And so this past May, we put 37 students on a bus for 2 weeks, and we traveled all around North Dakota. We visited Kevin and Minot. We had partners all over. We visited Tioga and Watford City and Williston and Dickinson and Glen Ullin and Richardson and Mandan and Bismarck and lots of different aspects of the energy industry. We received an incredibly warm welcome from Ron and his team and from Governor Armstrong. And our students were impressed with what they saw. They were impressed with the welcome they got, and they didn't know what was happening here on the western side of the state, and they didn't know what was happening in oil and gas. Can I read 2 student comments?
Please do.
So they took it for credit. The students had to take it for credit. They could do it for business credit or engineering credit or ag credit. We had students from all different majors. One of the students, so the first one, and I brought it up so I didn't misquote her. There are thousands of opportunities within the energy industry, and it's not just one specific job they're looking for. There are opportunities in accounting, finance, IT, engineering, human resources, operators, lab techs, and more. Without oil and gas, there would be nothing that we use in today's world that would be readily available to us. I didn't even know Governor Armstrong was going to say that yesterday. It was great to have many students from different colleges because they were asking questions. Meeting with Kathy Nessett was the day everything clicked. She was able to explain everything about oil and gas. One of the most impactful parts of the tour was seeing these professionals excited to share and explain to us about the ins and outs of the energy industry. And the other student said, before the trip, I'd never been to Western North Dakota, and I didn't know anything about the energy sector. I approached it with an open mind, and I came away with a broader perspective on how science fits into this complex system. I was surprised, you're not surprised because you're in this every day, but my students were surprised at how technologically advanced many of the companies were, and how committed they are to innovation, safety, and environmental responsibility. So our students noticed, and they care, and that's what they feel is important also. It was not the image I had of the industry. It changed also my view on Western North Dakota. I hadn't spent much time in the region before, and I was surprised at how scenic the landscape was and how much the towns had to offer. And it made me more open to the idea of living and working there in the future. That is part of what we're trying to do with our Bison to the Bakken, but really our workforce development is to expose students to opportunities that they have available. So they did have to do some work.
Yeah, round of applause for that. That's amazing. I am not surprised at all that it was Kathy that connected all the dots for that student. She does an amazing job doing that. But we were really fortunate to kick off the event. Josh Blackaby with Sam Pro, Kent Kirkhammer with Dakota, and Kate Black with Inland, and I hosted the students on day one. And we were scheduled for 8 hours. I was quite nervous how we were going to fill up 8 hours. These kids were so inquisitive. They asked a million questions, and so I love it because we just got to connect the dots for them. And so really appreciate your leadership on that, Kathryn. Want to go to Tom, who's been working on a project called Energy Hawks for a while. I know that's your vision, a passion of yours. COO of the EERC, so thank you for being here, Tom. Same thing, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do at the EERC, and then what is Energy Hawks all about?
All right, sounds good. Well, Energy Hawks was born out of, prior to me becoming the COO, more when I was involved in the technical side. But the idea was born about 8 years ago with the idea that when we saw students, and my children were students at universities at roughly that time, their knowledge and their thoughts around what North Dakota Energy was didn't match up with what mine were, being in the North Dakota energy industry. And a lot of that is just due to they're not exposed to the same information. And so what we created, we originally created a pilot program. One summer, we brought in 10 students from UND, and we inundated them with all things North Dakota energy. Whether it's on the production side, the transmission side, the energy trading side, the regulatory side. They met with technical experts, they met with industry experts, they talked to legislators. We tried to broaden their horizon as much, and then we took them out west. We took them out west and we let them crawl on drilling rigs. I shouldn't say we did, but industry was very gracious, literally letting them crawl on drilling rigs, seeing mine operations, coal-fired power plants, mine land reclamation. We also brought them to the cities to talk to city administrators, to understand the opportunities and the challenges that have occurred as North Dakota Energy has grown in the last few years. And then what we do is we bring them back for the last roughly 2/3 of the summer, and we get them to work in groups and to focus in on a topic of their choice in North Dakota Energy. Now these students come from, we don't want just engineering students. I'm an engineer by training. If we brought all engineering students into the room, they'd all sit and look at their own feet. You know, we wanted to bring in, this was more about educating everybody, not just talking to engineers and scientists. And so we have students from education, from the law school, from the med school, psychology, lots from the business school that come into the program. And they focus on a topic, and the topics can be technical, and I'd say about 2/3 of the topics are technical in nature, and about 1/3 are how can we address labor differently? How can we look at the social media and the information we're seeing and maybe change the narrative to reflect North Dakota Energy? That sort of thing. And it was such a great success, and thankfully the next year the State Energy Research Center was born through the North Dakota Legislature. Thank you to any legislators that may still be here. Really under the vision of Ron Ness and John Haryu, were two of the creators that created it. And we were able to fund it because we're not an academic entity. We're a research entity, and for us to be able to fund it was difficult. And when the State Energy Research Center came to born, today we actually use students from UND, NDSU. We've had them from Dickinson, Bismarck State, Newetta Hidatsa Sanish, and Minot State so far. And we would welcome broader than that. So it's been a great program.
Yeah, congratulations and great work on that project. I want to lean in a little bit because the title here is a new approach to attracting students. And you mentioned, Brent, that 45% of students in North Dakota, high school students, graduate and go on to no form of higher education. The problem is it's actually a lot higher in Western North Dakota. We're approaching 55% plus, I think, here in Watford City and other communities. So in your role as Chancellor, and we have an incredible Bakken Area Skills Center right down the street here doing great work in CTE. How does higher education bridge that gap and bring the message to our high schools that, you know, whether it's a 2-year degree or a certificate, you're much better off with these additional skills and pursuing opportunity in higher education? How do we bridge that gap and close that percentage that are not going to higher ed?
Yeah, it's actually a quick answer, and it's something we're already doing, is dual credit. So a lot of the seniors will come out of high school taking between 4 or up to 60 credits of dual credit, college credit while they're in high school. But one of the challenges there is most of that is general education. I would say 90% plus. The gap is that the kids that are looking at not going to 4-year college, they're not necessarily looking at dual credit. And so the challenge we had here in Watford City 2 years ago, and Superintendent Holland again expressed this, more than half of the kids aren't going to college. I want to provide some skills for them while they're here. How can we do that? That's not just college algebra, that's not speech, that's not the general education that if they're going to college anyway. What can we do while they're here? And so putting that together with the new Bakken Area Skills Center, so you have a place to do it. In Bismarck State, when I was the interim president there, with mechatronics programs, with automation programs, with power plant process technology, with petroleum processing technology, and bringing those in so you can start on your way towards a certificate and then up to associate degree, that was bringing the trades into the high schools. And I can tell you that is not being done statewide, but that's an opportunity for us to look at what parts of the state need different types of degrees. If you're in Fargo, they need manufacturing employees. They'd like these automation programs as well, but those programs are in Wahpeton. The grads from Fargo, again, 45 to 50% not going to college. How do we tap into that? There's a new building in South Fargo that the North Dakota School of Science actually owns, where high school kids are going through. Their initial offerings are welding and ag and a lot of general education. So I'm encouraging President Flanagan, this has to be where you start them on their way to HVAC, to automation for those manufacturers, to plumbing, electrician. Let's start that in high school. If any of you have high school kids, I have 2 of them right now, a freshman and a senior. They have a lot of flexibility in their last 2 years of curriculum of what they're taking. So let's dig into this more and figure out how to have even more dual credit opportunities. And as Steve Holan said, the superintendent of Watford City, how do we get to them before they leave? And then it's higher ed's job to have the warm handoff after that point. It might be out of a CTE center with some of those programs. It might be after a kid is getting an associate degree while they're in high school, and then they can jump right into UND, into a majors program, into NDSU, into their last 2 years for a major in that 4-year. I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities here, but really it's getting to them earlier and broadening out what we offer, not just that general ed. So then the long answer is the board of chair and as me, as the chancellor coming in and having these communications with legislators. I see a lot of legislators in the room. The legislators get to call the balls and strikes on what the funding looks like for dual credit, what the funding looks like for online delivery of dual credit. By the way, almost 50% of dual credit is delivered online in some instances, in some cases. So we have to be careful what we're doing with funding approaches to different delivery methods, and so we get to the end result. But the sky's the limit here, and we're excited to get on with it.
Well, bottom line is, in higher education, there tends to be a lot of artificial barriers that get created. And that's a big part of what we're trying to do, is blow those things up so that we're offering the type of education in Western North Dakota that students and their families want. So you brought up funding, and let's talk about funding a little bit. In North Dakota in higher education, you essentially get funded, these institutions get funded 4 years in the rearview mirror, meaning the funding goes to the institutions based off credits that were produced 4 years prior. So we got a lot of business entrepreneurs in the room. You can imagine if you want to start up a program, where do you get the seed funding? You don't, because you're funded 4 years in the rearview mirror. One of the things the legislature did this last session, and major kudos, a ton of bold vision on this, was provided seed funding. They appropriated nearly $40 million across all of our institutions for something called Innovation Workforce Education. The NDSU version of that was something called New Horizons, and it was dollars provided to start up new innovative programs that responded to workforce. So Kathryn, would love to hear what NDSU's plans are for those dollars and how those programs might impact Western North Dakota.
Yeah, first of all, thank you to the legislators that are in the room. We certainly appreciate the $16 million for New Horizons to NDSU, and I have my notes here because President Cook, of course, would make sure that I got all of them correct, having you two sit on the panel with me. So we have new academic programming and student support services, and the academic programs that we're standing up are really in engineering, health, and agriculture, because those tend to be the higher demand needed workforce elements here in the state of North Dakota. So we're standing up new degrees and credentials in AI and machine learning, robotics and automation, material science and engineering, energy engineering, including nuclear engineering, healthcare administration, clinical trials management, and regulatory affairs, and expanding the nursing program both in Bismarck and in Fargo. So excited for those transformations, and the seed money is really important. As the Dean of the College of Business, I understand the revenue will flow if I start a new program. However, I have to hire a person before I have any revenue. So the seed money is vitally important for standing up new programs.
Yeah, and those programs that you mentioned, robotics, automation, machine learning, I think if you ask the business owners, the leaders of these corporations out here, those are the types of jobs that are going to be in demand in the near future. So well done, and great work focusing on what's needed. Tom, I want to go back to the EERC. I think when people think about research, maybe the common perception is you've got a bunch of folks in a room researching things that don't matter. the truth is at EERC, not only are you researching things focused on Western North Dakota and our industry, but students get to be a part of that. So and that's so important to have the students having hands-on involvement. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Certainly, and even aside from the Energy Hawks program, we have anywhere from as many as 20 to 40 university students working for us. I started as a student at UND, or at EERC in 1986. I think students are critical and important to the workforce that we have. And those students get to work side by side with our researchers to look at real world problems, to understand what's really going on and to help provide solutions for those. We've had students in the past that have been named on patents with their ideas that have come forward. So they're a critical part, a very important part of our overall program at the center. And of course, we get the majority of them probably from the engineering program is where we grab the most of them from. And we do have students on occasion that even come from outside of UND, from some of the other schools.
And is it a mix of graduate, undergraduate? What does it mean for an undergraduate student to get experience?
Yeah. It's tremendous because that's where I started, right? I mean, that's how I ended up in the industry and stayed with it. I just loved it. And so we do, I don't know what the split is. It's probably around 50-50 on undergraduate and graduate students. You know, the graduates are probably dealing with a little bit more detail-oriented work, and the undergraduates are doing a little bit more of what they used to call it when I was a student, the grunt work, right? But you're still exposed, you're still part of it, you're still learning from it.
Well, a personal story, our Vice President for Technology, Eric Nelson, while he was an undergraduate in chemistry at UND, was an intern, worked at the ERC, and I know for him, I won't speak for him, but I know that inspired him in a big way to come out to Williston, North Dakota and get involved with the industry. So that undergraduate experience is incredible. Okay, career builders, one of the most underrated, underutilized, unknown programs that we have in the state that is of massive benefit to every single person in this room. Brent, could you educate us all a little bit on what Career Builders is and how people use it and what the benefit is?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So there's a list that's prepared by the Workforce Development Council. So it's a federally mandated group that's recognized by the legislature and governor's office through the last few administrations as this is the group that is in charge of what the workforce needs are and accumulating a list of needed professions. And so if the professions are on that list, then there's another program called Career Builders that actually will put a match forth with a private sector match for someone that's joining in this profession. And I would assume you can find a lot of your needed professions on that list because the list is long. And so that's all kept in the system office. Brenda Zaspel's her name, and she does the financial aid for the entire system. She oversees that, but she's also the one that runs Career Builders. So if there's questions on whether new hires would fit that and you're willing to put in a match to match some of that state money, this is an area to get started. The healthcare industry's been really aggressive in using it, and so they're utilizing that for helping with those onboarding expenses, with actually to offset the expenses that they're putting forth on paying for student loans and tuition reimbursement and such. So it's something that this industry could also tap.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that a lot of the jobs that are out there in this oil and gas industry would qualify. So in this really competitive job market, as managers, hiring managers, you're constantly trying to think, how do you get the competitive edge? And we all have those team members that want to advance in their career. This is an incredible tool. Seriously, if you don't know about it, look it up, because this is a great tool that your company can deploy to further advance and give a benefit and get some state funding in support of it. So definitely something to check out. You know, really would be interested in picking your brain here a little bit, Kathryn. It seems like, you know, when I was going to school, everybody said you had to go to college. If you don't go to college, you don't have a future. It seems like that, you know, that narrative has changed, and so no longer can we sit back and wait for students to come to us. How are you thinking about recruitment in the College of Business? Any best practices or tools that you're finding success in to attract students to your college?
Well, I think there's a couple of things to note about, okay, it feels a little weird to talk about higher education with these two up here, as I feel a little out-qualified. But the idea of recruiting students, it really, for us, is very contingent and very connected to the jobs that they're going to get. So thinking about our interactions with employers, thinking about our partners in our different programs that sponsor our students for their student org activities or have classroom visits, the ability to say to new incoming students or prospective students, invite them to campus and say, these are the employers that we work with, these are the types of jobs that our students are getting, is really our key element in recruiting. These are the experiences that you'll have when you're here. Here's how we're going to prepare you for the workforce, and these are the types of jobs that you can get. And that connection between the job that you can get and the employer is, the two-year schools do it very well. If you are in the Bakken Area Skills Center, or if you're in any of the facilities that we have where employers are able to sponsor students through that, you'll see their logos all over. You'll know that they're sponsoring students, and that's the types of jobs you can get. So higher education, I think, is seeing more of that and talking about it more. We've had a great placement rate for our students. 97% of our students out of the College of Business are working in their field within 6 months, which is a great statistic to say, but we have to be able to tell students where they're going to go, what types of jobs they're going to get, what is that experience. And we do that through our employers' work, and we do that through creating programs that provide value for those graduates. So having our employers and our industry professionals sit on advisory boards for all of our programs, making sure that we have that strong connection between industry and what we're preparing students to do.
Well, deciding whether or not to go or where to go to college is definitely a family decision. And I think for parents, they want to know that their graduate, their daughter, their son is going to have a job. So I think you nailed it there. Tom, would love to talk a little bit about AI in higher education. President Armacost has been a leader on this in the state, a leader in getting way out ahead of this and making sure our universities are thinking about the appropriate role for artificial intelligence in our institutions. Maybe talk a little bit about what UND is doing to be a leader in this space and how you're incorporating AI in the classroom.
Certainly. And so since I'm not in the classroom, I can only talk from what I hear and what I understand. But yes, we definitely are at the forefront of looking to adopt it in a controlled manner. I mean, when I look at AI, I look at the three corners of a triangle. You have the great capability, but you also have the limitation. And as capability gets greater, it's harder to actually see the limitation, even though it still exists. And then you have the ethics and the implementation and the confidentiality side of it. And so bridging those three, and I think just like when I was a kid going to high school, I wasn't allowed to have a calculator on my desk because they thought it would, it was cheating. Today, pretty much every kid in high school has a calculator on their desk, or at least on their phone, or wherever their calculator is. It's a tool, and this is, I think, what he's recognized. It's an incredibly valuable tool, not to replace thinking, but to enhance it, to make it better, to augment it, and to accelerate it. And I think that's really what President Armstrong has grabbed onto and is running very strongly with.
Very good, thank you. Kathryn, I want to go to actually you next here and really talk about the land grant mission that NDSU has. It's a unique mission. Most people don't know what the Moral Act is and what it did. But how do you think the land grant mission will help NDSU serve the entire state, and how do you see that mission helping serve the energy industry?
Yeah. So as you said, most people are not familiar necessarily with the land grant mission. So the land grant universities, there are multiple universities in each state that have a land grant mission. And that was land that was granted from the federal government for the university to use to sell off to get the proceeds in order to run a university. But in order to do that, the obligation was to serve the entire state through agricultural education, an extension network, and the mechanical arts, which for us is engineering. So that's how the land grant mission started, was here we're gonna give you some funding to start the university, but you are obligated to serve the state. We do that at NDSU through our agricultural extension network, which has an agent in every county. We have an ag agent in every county. I'd love to have a business agent in every county. I'm working on that. But that mission really to serve the state as far as education for us now has expanded beyond ag and engineering. It also includes access to education, meaning how do we reach the high school students here in Watford City and in Williston and in Dickinson who don't know if they want to go to college. And not just how do we reach them, but how do we show them, if you don't want to come to NDSU at the start, how do you eventually get to NDSU? What does that path look like? Where could you go to facilitate these jobs? And we take that mission very seriously. We have for the land and for the people is our motto, and that idea of serving the state in the New Horizons proposal is expanding beyond just ag to include engineering in the western side of the state with our energy engineering and nuclear engineering, but also in healthcare. So expanding that ability to fund and deliver nurses and healthcare administration to all the counties that need it.
Thank you, Kathryn. Well, Brent, I'm going to give you the last word here. 3 years ago, I sat on this stage in his spot, and he sat in mine. He was lieutenant governor, and he had just appointed me to the state board. I was only on the job, I think, for about 3 months, and he absolutely grilled me the whole time. So the turntables have turned here a little bit. I'm kidding, but I want to give you the last word. I think when you look across the room, there's actually quite a few members of our institutions that are out here. We've got Dickinson State, we've got Williston State, we've got Minot State. Higher ed showed up in a big way. And I think it's, you've encouraged them to do that. So ultimately, we're going to take a vote next Tuesday at the state board meeting on I think if you're going to be the permanent guy. If you get the job, what ultimately do you believe your role is, and what's your top priority?
Well, we've been talking a lot about the priorities already with the kids and with what those professions are, what do the employers need. Kathryn said it really well. What do those employers need? And in making sure that we, as a higher ed group where we have 45,000 students now and 10,000 plus employees, are all focused on that, of what is the relevance that we need to hold for our kids, for the workforce, for the state of North Dakota, okay? But what's my job as the chancellor would be a lot of what it's been the last few years of being that hub on the wheel of communication. So this job is dealing with not only him as the board chair and the rest of the State Board of Higher Ed, who are all appointed by the governor, but also legislative leadership, also governor's office, and then you as industry. So there's a lot of information pouring into the chancellor office. And then we have our own system office staff, of which we have hundreds of IT employees as well. We have a 25-year-old system. So I also have a job of being a government administrator, of trying to come through and help lobby to legislators saying, all that data query that you're wondering about, where the online students are, which couch they're sitting on, drinking what Mountain Dew, if it's in New York or if it's in the city of Fargo itself. You can't ask these questions if your system is 25 years old and couldn't even contemplate an online student or a high school student. So these conversations are already happening. And so we've got multiple interim committees saying, hey, come and talk about your ERP system needs. And then, hey, come and talk about what you're doing with high school kids and dual credit. So I'll be the spokesman for the group, basically, as I have been the last few jobs. And I see the time is ticking down. You didn't let me give much of an intro, so I have to always thank this room for this building when I'm here, and it's totally seeing a squirrel and running after it right now. But I want to thank the people and the industry in this room for what you see in this building. I want to thank you, Ron, for bringing back the group every 2 years and coming and doing this again. If you want to see further evidence of what this industry has done, you drive through McKenzie County, you see paved roads. That was all scoria roads. It was pretty miserable to get off of the beaten trail in McKenzie County before what you all have done. Go on the reservation. My lake cabin is south of Mandaree, north of Killdeer. There's pavement, there's fiber, there's power down into the hinterlands on the reservation. There are brand new schools, football fields, community buildings, all through MHA. What is that from? Royalties from oil and gas, tax sharing with the state of North Dakota. So this industry has been a miracle worker the last 15 years in this side of the state. I want to thank you for that. So now this next iteration of what I'm trying to do professionally is trying to help you all get the workforce that you need in the future. I'm very excited about the opportunity.
Well, thanks, Brent. Well, we're going to close off and out here and hand it over back to Ron, but I just want to thank the industry as well. I'm a born and raised North Dakota product, but when I graduated from NDSU in 2010, I had no plans to stay in North Dakota. This industry gave me an opportunity to stay in North Dakota, to build a career, to live the American dream, to start a company, and to raise a family. And I want you to know that higher education is open for business, and we want to work with you, and we want to serve the state and deliver the types of students that you need. So thank you all for being here and sticking around for the last segment, and thanks, Ron, for
How
having
about a big round of applause for this is where right folks at the right time, and Danita Bai from our Board of Directors is also on the Board of Education. So thanks, Danita. Absolutely, I think we've got, we talked about K through 12 going the right direction, and higher ed, I think, is being reformed and moving in the right direction. So we're going to wrap this show up. Can't thank all of our sponsors enough. Thanks to all of you. We had a fantastic couple days. The city of Watford City, McKenzie County, the Rough Rider Center staff, and most of all, maybe the Petroleum Council staff and my staff of 6 pulled all this off, and it was just a tremendous amount of work for them. I get the easy job to stand up here and talk, but thank you for coming. On the way out, the Flag family and Scott Hannon has a free gift for you. You can sign up for a Trump pin. And coming soon, I'm telling you, the Williston Basin Petroleum Conference is going to be a big, big show. So don't hesitate when we send out the rooms and we send out those things. Get that book, because the world is coming to see what we're doing right here in North Dakota and the Bakken. So with that, thank you very much. Drive safe. See you next time. Back here next year.